قال يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما أما بعد. It's a time of rest for many of us. It's a time of vacation, a time to recuperate, a time to get re-energized. But as we are in these days of rest, our brothers and sisters in Gaza particularly, and other parts of the world more generically, have been in a situation of extreme difficulty. The brutality that they've experienced over the last 3 years is not hidden upon anyone here. And the problem for us as Muslims, as believers, as our Prophet ﷺ has told us, is that when one part of the body, the believers are one body, when one group hurts somewhere, the rest of the body also hurts. So we feel their pain. But what exacerbates our pain is we feel even more helpless than they, because we can't do anything materialistically to support their cause, to even defend them, to bring any type of relief to them. That helplessness, the ongoing brutality, the ongoing occupation, all of that creates a sense of pessimism, a sense of hopelessness. And a person can very easily be numb to the pain, could easily just block that out because it's just too much to process on a day-to-day basis, too much to track, especially when you feel like you can't do anything in a material way. But I would like to share with you all today, as we end this year, 3 points on how we navigate this. And we do this for our own salvation, for our own sanity. But we also do this because we owe it to our brothers and sisters who are being oppressed around the world, and specifically those in Gaza. May Allah bring them relief soon and fast. Point number 1 for us as believers is we must remain optimistic. We must remain optimistic irrespective of the circumstances that we see around us. This is an element of our faith. This is part and parcel of our iman. The Prophet ﷺ said in a beautiful hadith, he said, إِنْ قَامَتِ السَّاعَةِ فِي يَدِ أَحَدِكُمْ فَسِيرًا فَإِنِ اسْتَطَاعَ أَنْ يَغْرِسَهَا فَإِنِ اسْتَطَاعَ أَلَّا تَقُومَ حَتَّى يَغْرِسَهَا فَلْيَغْرِسْهَا. The Prophet ﷺ said in this hadith that is narrated by Imam Ahmad and others, he says that if the day of judgment is about to start, imagine the scenario. This is obviously a hypothetical scenario because the Prophet is trying to make a point here. Imagine a scenario where you are standing and you see the day of judgment is about to start. It's imminent. But in your hand there is a seedling, a fasila. A seedling is something that has a small little branch and a few leaves. You will plant it in the ground and eventually it will take root. There you have a fasila, a seedling in your hand. فَإِنِ اسْتَطَاعَ أَلَّا تَقُومَ حَتَّى يَغْرِسَهَا فَلْيَغْرِسْهَا. If the person who has the seedling can plant that seedling before the day of judgment begins, they should plant it. They should plant that seedling. It's a very beautiful hadith of the Prophet, and it really has it's something for us to ponder over. Because you can ask logically, what's the point of planting the seedling? That tree will never catch root. It will never grow. It will never provide any fruit. It will never provide any shade. What's the point of planting it? Isn't this wasted effort? You can ask that. But the Prophet ﷺ is making an example here, or giving an example here. He is giving the example that as a believer, we do whatever we can control. We focus on whatever is in our capabilities, whatever is in front of us. What's in front of us in this example is the seedling. Can you plant it? Then plant it. The results are not our concern. We are liable for the effort. We are not liable for the results. The results are in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the perspective the Prophet ﷺ wants us to have as believers. Even if you think that there's no point to doing this, do it. It's a good thing. You are doing it on your behalf to do your part. The result is then in the hand of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You don't know what the outcome of it will be down the road. This is the example that he ﷺ shared with us. From that example, we can understand. As believers, we focus on what we can do and we always remain optimistic, even if the end of the world is imminent. Even in that scenario where it's the worst case scenario, the world is about to end. Even in that case, we remain optimistic, hopeful, we continue to do whatever we can. That's the way we move forward. That's how a believer operates. And in these difficult, really dark times, where we see the brutality, we see the hypocrisy in our elected officials across the Western world, in Canada, in America, everywhere. The double standards, the bandying of freedom of speech, and then how it's muzzled when it's used by the Palestinians or for the Palestinian cause. The outright double standards. It's not a surprise to anybody, but it's so jarring to see, so obviously in our faces. For this extended period of time. The double standards are almost comical. It's not funny though, because people's lives are on line. But the double standards are so apparent that it's beyond belief. But we, as believers, will continue to move forward. We will not let that dampen our spirits. We will not let that overpower us with pessimism. We continue to plant our seedlings. We continue to plant whatever fasila we have in our hands. We continue to do whatever we can. Because the result at the end of the day is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And He has told us, وَلَا تَهِنُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا وَأَنْتُمُ الْأَعْلَوْنَ إِن كُنْتُم مُؤْمِنِينَ. In Surah Al-Imran, after the Prophet ﷺ lost the battle of Uhud, the Sahaba and the Prophet ﷺ suffered a great defeat. And many great Sahaba were martyred in that. And this was a defeat that came after what seemed to be a resounding victory. It makes the defeat even more egregious. The Prophet ﷺ is told, don't worry, you are going to have the upper hand as long as you are believers. In kuntum mu'minin. If we are believers, we believe in the promise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we believe what He has told us in His book, then eventually the upper hand will be with us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the next ayah, وَتِلْكَ الْأَيَّامُ نُدَاوِلُهَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ. These days we alternate between people. The idea being, there's good days and bad days on a personal level, but from a societal level, there are certain time periods where a group is dominant, and other times where a group is not dominant. And us as a Muslim ummah, we're in this state right now that we haven't seen any Muslim dominance for an extended period of time. So we may think it will never happen in the future, because all we have seen is suffering and humiliation and losses and pessimism. That's all we've seen for most of our lives. So we may think this is how it's going to be. But Allah says, no, it's not going to be this way. وَتِلْكَ الْأَيَّامُ نُدَاوِلُهَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ. And the Arabic here is very beautiful. It's not هَذِهِ الْأَيَّامُ نُدَاوِلُهَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ. These days. He says, تِلْكَ الْأَيَّامُ. Those days. To point out, it may seem this thing that you're experiencing may seem very far away, but trust Allah. Eventually it will come. In 1099 AD, the Crusaders ransacked Jerusalem, and they killed the majority of the inhabitants that lived in Jerusalem, in Al-Quds at that time. The Muslims, the Jews, and the Christians. Men, women, children, combatants, non-combatants. And for 100 years, nearly 100 years, Jerusalem was under the control of the Crusaders. And Qubbat al-Sakhra, the Dome of the Rock, had a cross on it for nearly 100 years. And Masjid al-Aqsa was a stable used for horses that would feed there and do their feces there for nearly 100 years. Eventually, the tide was turned and that was corrected. But Salahuddin Ayyubi came to the scene. The point is, it may seem hopeless, the situation may seem dire, it may seem like there's no positive outcome on the horizon, but we are told as believers, don't lose hope. وَلَا تَهِنُوا وَلَا تَحْزَنُوا وَأَنْتُمُ الْأَعْلَوْنَ. You are going to have the upper hand eventually. If not today, if not in the next few years, eventually it's going to happen. This is Allah's promise. And for us, individually, we continue to plant the seedlings. Even if the end of the world is imminent, وَفِي يَدِ أَحَدِكُمْ فَسِيلًا, we continue to plant that fasila and we trust Allah's plan. This is point number one. We keep optimistic, we continue to remain optimistic in these difficult times. أقول ما تسمعون واستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن والاه أما بعد. I'm going to request a few of you to just fill in the gaps as people are coming in. There are, people who are joining us and they're not finding space. Please, if you can fill a gap in front of you, that will be much appreciated. Jazakumullah khairan. As the year wraps up, I'd like to share 3 reminders with you all. As we are experiencing the 3rd month of the onslaught on our brothers and sisters in Gaza, and all the other parts of the world, in Sudan, in Yemen, in other parts of the world where the Muslims are still suffering. As we see this day to day, as we experience this, as we feel helpless to do anything, 3 points I'd like to share with you to give us some way to move forward in a positive manner. Point number 1 was to remain optimistic. Always, always, always remain optimistic and never lose hope. This is number 1. Number 2 is to continue to speak out. Continue to speak out. Exercise the freedom of speech that you have. The Quran instructs us, "Ud'u ila sabili rabbika bil hikmati wal maw'izati al hasana wajadilhum billati hiya ahsan." Invite to the way of your Lord with wisdom, bil hikmati wal maw'izati al hasana, with good examples. And if you are to engage somebody in an argument, then do it in the best possible way. This is how the Quran instructs us to engage in dialogue. Okay? It has to be with wisdom. That means we use words that are not meant to provoke people. It's meant to reinstate facts. It's meant to debunk lies. It's done with wisdom. Maw'idat al-hasana, it provides the best example. We use facts. We use things that are agreed upon. We don't use conjecture. We don't use hyperbole. That's out of place. And then when we engage in a conversation, in a dialogue, وَجَادِلُهُمْ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ, we don't lose our ethics and our morals. We don't start slinging mud at people. We don't start using inappropriate language. We don't engage in that way. That's not the way of the Prophet ﷺ. That's not the Sunnah. That's not what we do. But within these parameters, we continue to speak forward. We continue to speak. We continue to use our voices and continue to express our outrage. Express our outrage at the hypocrisy, at the double standards. I'll give you an example from Canada because I live there. In Canada, we have a system where you would message, either phone call or email your elected representative. That's a local representative. And by law, they have to log that. Every email, every phone call, they have to log it. You see? So if 10 people reach out to a elected representative's office and they log 10 entries, that's a very important item because 10 people are concerned about something. If 100 people reach out, that is like an emergency. The roof is on fire. 100 people from the neighborhood are reaching out about something. Something has happened. Okay? This is political engagement. These are the tools that we have available to us. You must reach out. You must email, call your representative, whatever the political tools you have here within your system. I'm not so well versed with it, but you all know it better than I do. The point is you have to do it. The point is you must do it. You may think, what's the point? They're going to log this email and toss it afterwards. But that's not the point. The point of us as mentioned in the previous example, is if you have a seedling, we plant it, even if the world is ending. Because we focus on what we can do. We don't focus on what happens afterwards. But I would make an argument for you all that when a lot of us engage politically, a lot of us start to email and phone call and tweet and talk about this, the algorithms will recognize the power of the people. Always know, brothers and sisters, wherever there's people, there's power. Wherever there's a jama'ah of people, there is power. We have to recognize as a community that we have power that we can exercise. And of course we do this as detailed by the Quran. بِالْحِكْمَةِ وَالْمَوْعِظَةِ الْحَسَنَةِ وَجَادِلٌ بِالَّتِي هِيَ أَحْسَنُ, in the best way. But we have to exercise this. We can't just squander it. The way to squander it is to say, what's the point of reaching out? What's the point of speaking out? Nothing will change. The moment you think that way, it's already done. The way we should think about it is, we continue to log our complaints. We continue to express our outrage. We continue to say, when will this change? When will you stop saying Israel has a right to self-defense before saying the people of Palestine deserve humanitarian aid? When will you say the people of Palestine also have the right to self-defense? When will we get to that point in the discourse? We have to ask these questions. We have to be pointed, but we do it factually. We do it with wisdom. We do it politely, but we do it. If you think this is a lot of work, you know what's a lot of work? Rescuing your family out of a rubble. That's a lot of work. Not having a house to go to because it was bombed. That is depression. That's a tough situation. Emailing, calling is not that much work. It's just a matter of you being convinced that this is important enough for you. The Prophet ﷺ told us in a hadith, he said ﷺ, that Sayyid al-Shuhada Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib, the best martyr ever, the leader of the martyrs is Hamza radiallahu anhu, the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ. وَرَجُلٌ قَامَ إِلَى إِمَامٍ جَائِرٍ فَأَمَرَهُ وَنَهَاهُ فَقَتَلَهُ. And also a person, and this could be any person. The Prophet ﷺ said, a person who stands in front of a unjust, oppressive ruler and engages that ruler, tells them this is wrong and this is right, and this ruler executes this person. That person is in the same category as Hamza radiallahu anhu. Now, I'm not saying, the Prophet ﷺ is not saying go out and get this or try to become this martyr. That's not what he's saying, ﷺ. And that's not what I'm saying either. What I'm trying to explain to you is, for us, speaking truth to power is one of the greatest things that we can do as believers. It puts you in the same breath as Hamza ibn Abdul Muttalib radiallahu anhu. That's what the example is supposed to be here. The point here is we continue to speak. We continue to use our voices. We do it in the best possible way. We do it without hatred. We do it with facts. And we do it pointedly. When will we get to this point? And when we do it often enough, brothers and sisters, change will come. And even if we don't see it in our time, in our lifetime, we do our best. Because that's all we are asked to do by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. مَعَذِرَةً إِلَىٰ رَبِّكُمْ. Do what you can so you can tell your Lord afterwards, I did what I could. That's point number 2. And finally, and inshallah we'll conclude with this, never give up dua. Making dua for ourselves, our families of course, but particularly for those who are suffering unimaginable losses, and how they will rebuild their lives, all of the difficulties that await the people of Gaza, the people of Palestine, the people of Sudan, all places in the world. Remember every one of those folks in your du'as. In fact, Rasulullah did something very unique when something tragic happened or a catastrophe would happen to the community. قَنَتَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وسلم شهرا متتابعا في الظهر والعصر والمغرب والعشاء وصلاة الصبح في دبر كل صلاة إذا قال سمع الله لمن حمده من الرقة الأخيرة. The Messenger of Allah عليه الصلاة والسلام would make a public supplication, a public dua called qunut. Qunut al-nazila. You may remember qunut from Ramadan. But he would make that qunut in a situation of a catastrophe. And he would do it, alayhi salatu wasalam, for months. Like months on months. After every prayer, in the last rak'ah, after saying Sami Allahu liman hamida. And he would name people that, oh Allah, bring upon this tribe who has murdered the Sahaba, bring upon them your wrath, and bring them to justice. He would name them in his dua, alayhi salatu wasalam. The point is, he would make dua privately. He would make dua privately, and he would make dua publicly. Publicly to encourage everyone to join the dua, but also to encourage people to continue making dua afterwards as well. For us, our dua has to be the thing that we hold on to in the most difficult times. It's the thing that will give us solace. It's the thing that will give us comfort. It's the thing that will bring us our salvation. And it's the thing that will bring relief to our brothers and sisters. We continue to do that. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Ud'u Allah wa antum muqinuna bil ijaba." Make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, being certain He is going to answer your dua. So when you make dua, my brothers and sisters, for yourselves, for your families, for good well-being in this life, for good health, and for victory, for a removal of oppression, for justice, do it knowing Allah will answer it. Without any doubt. When you do so, make dua without any doubt. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is listening and He's going to answer it. And then the answer will come. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring relief to our brothers and sisters around the world, particularly those in Gaza, particularly those who are in war zones like Sudan. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring tranquility in our homes, to our families. We ask Allah to give us afwa wal afiyah, good health and well-being. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us barakah in our families, in our wealth, in our times. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the tawfiq to understand the Quran and Sunnah and to implement in our lives. Inna Allaha wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala nabi ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin fil awwalin wa fil akhirin wa salli ala Muhammadin fil mala'il a'la ila yawmiddin. Allahumma ahyina ala sunnatihi wa mitna ala millatihi واحشرنا في زمرته واسقنا من حوضه يا رب العالمين. اللهم آت نفوسنا تقواها وزكها أنت خير من زكاها أنت وليها ومولاها. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وقنا الصلاة.